Hi, my name is Jason Matthews, and I am the co-designer of Twilight Struggle and the designer of Twilight Struggle Red Sea. I'm also an avid player on Steam, and I have several questions that I've been asked to answer about Twilight Struggle Red Sea and the process of designing that game as a board game that has been adapted by Playdeck so successfully. Since I'm old enough to have lived through a large chunk of the Cold War, one of the events that occurred while I was old enough to remember is the conflict in the Horn of Africa and the famines that resulted from those conflicts. We Are the World, Live Aid. It was probably the first major international catastrophe that I can recall in my memory. And so I knew this was always part of the Cold War, and it is not properly reflected in Twilight Struggle. And so one of the drivers had been, we should do something about the Horn of Africa. It really was important towards the end. It's not in the game. And we looked at maybe including a variant card, or an expansion card at some point or other, and that didn't happen. And so a little bit of a COVID project, really. I just made a full game out of the subject matter. And this was truly the most challenging part of the design. I wanted the game to really feel like Twilight Struggle, because the idea behind the game was to help new players with a more accessible way of on-ramping onto the game, but at the same time not shortchanging them by giving them a simpler experience, I guess. And there are several Twilight Struggle inspired designs that are already out there that do that, to be honest. The first thing, of course, was this was being designed as a lunchtime game, which is a series that GMT has launched. And so I really wanted the game to be playable in a realistic lunchtime that people have. And so this game can honestly be played in about 30 minutes with experienced players, and if you're playing on the Playdeck app, you can be done much quicker than that, and so that is fantastic. So that meant, in terms of distilling this game, we had to shorten the number of turns, of course, and we had to limit the geography and the number of card plays so that you could actually fit the game in the time limits that were presented by this design series. Outside of that, we did not simplify the rules of this game, and the reason we didn't is that once you have played Twilight Struggle Red Sea, you are totally capable of playing Twilight Struggle, the full game, because you already understand all of the elements of play. In fact, this game has one or two small elements that aren't included in the original game. You have the full experience when you've completed a game of Twilight Struggle Red Sea. Well, the main thing that we sort of pretend isn't true in Twilight Struggle but is too big to ignore in Twilight Struggle Red Sea is, yes, the Soviet Union and the United States are influencing what is occurring in the Red Sea, and they are playing their usual game of chess with each other in this region. But all of the countries in this region have existed for millennia, and all of them have complicated historical relationships that in many regards outweigh whatever their relationship during the Cold War and thin veneer of ideology that is overlaying centuries of history and centuries of interaction and historical rivalries and historical concerns that all of these countries have. In this game, we try and reflect that quite a bit more than in Twilight Struggle. You see it in part represented in the way the geographic lines work in this game, but also importantly in some events that are clearly about rivalries that don't have very much to do with the Cold War and predate it. For instance, with the Egyptians and the Ethiopians, who have centuries of dispute about control of the Nile. It flares up yet again during the Cold War, but it has been there for a very long, long time. The first thing that surprised me is just how long this game took to design. I thought, the events were relatively straightforward, but getting everything to work so that it still felt like a Twilight Struggle game was an extraordinarily excruciating process of tons and tons of playtesting. And I was lucky to have an incredibly dedicated team of playtesters who stood through this game for a very long time, and I had, in particular, two guys in Hungary who played every single day, multiple times, and provided just invaluable feedback. But I really did not think that designing a Twilight Struggle variant was going, especially a relatively short one, was going to take almost as much time as designing Twilight Struggle, even though the basis of both the rules and the mechanisms already existed. So that, I guess that was the largest thing that took me aback a little bit. I mean, first of all, I play this way probably more than I do face-to-face myself, so I think they're absolutely fantastic. And Red Sea in particular is something that you can get all the way through in almost no time, but still feel like you had a deep strategic decision-making experience. Pretty much, honestly, I buy and download almost every notable board game that comes out on Steam, and I think it's just a fantastic way for players to interact, be able to play with their friends across long distances. Of course, the international tournament play that's available for Twilight Struggle is really made possible by these apps, and I'm very grateful for them and totally enjoy them. Well, that ends these questions. I'm excited to see what Playdeck does next, and thanks to all of the fans of the Twilight Struggle and Twilight Struggle Red Sea app. I look forward to seeing you all online.